Welcome back to another live episode. My name is Christian Golick, and I'm a video content producer, and I help entrepreneurs and content creators become seen and recognized using video. On today's show, I'm going to be chatting with my good friend Arielle Thomas, who is the executive producer of a very popular marketing podcast, Stay Paid, which is hitting the top 10 on iTunes right now, which is incredible. Now, if you're thinking, well, why are we talking about podcasting when this entire channel is about video and all you do is talk about video, Christian? Well, and we'll get into this, I'm sure. A medium is a medium. The goal is to strengthen your connection with your core audience. I truly believe that video is the best medium to do that, but podcasting has some really unique abilities to just suck people in and capture their attention for hours on end. And I'm very curious of how podcast does that, because I am not the most well-versed in podcasting. On the technical end, I certainly know how to do it, but the nitty-gritty, in the trenches of podcasting, that's where Arielle lives, and that's what I want to talk to her about today. And to give you a little insight on Arielle Thomas, she is a digital content producer for the company she works for. And in the 3 years at her company, Reminder Media, she has been responsible for creating hundreds of videos and digital content, ranging from documentary style to social media content across how many different social media platforms. And I feel like this is like a cliche thing to say, but I can truly say it is very true for Arielle. She puts her heart and soul into every single video project. I've known her for years. I've worked with her. I've hired her on my work before. She really does go above and beyond. And from what it sounds like at Reminder Media, that goes noticed. And I believe that before the shutdown in 2020, she was in the running to be MVP at the company, and it's a decent sized company. She was in the running to be MVP before the lockdown, which is just an incredible testament to her work ethic. On top of all that, she also produces Stay Paid, one of the top marketing podcasts on iTunes. So I'm kind of surprised that she even has time for this interview, but let us bring her on. Arielle, how are you?
Hi, that was so kind. It's so funny. I was just saying to Christian right before this, I've been in back-to-back meetings all morning. So I am very, very busy. But when Christian, approached me with doing this, I was more than willing to, accept the opportunity, because it's an incredible opportunity to speak on this. But also I was very excited because, like you said, podcasting is something that I really do love and I have found a passion for over the last few years. So I'm more than willing to, talk to anyone that's interested about it. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm having this interview with you so that I can learn.
Nice.
But I'm also sure that people watching will also appreciate this.
Cool.
Also, happy St. Patty's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Crack a few on the. No, I'm not in college anymore. I can't do that.
No. It was funny. I had my morning meeting this morning and I wasn't in green. And I got on the morning meeting and I said, wait, I have to change. I can't not be in green on St. Patrick's Day. You got to wear something green or have something festive. So
well,
I won't be drinking beer, but I will be wearing my green sweater. So that's close to forgetting.
So I guess to jump into this, we know you produce one of the top marketing podcasts on iTunes right now, which is really incredible. When did you start making? When did the idea of Stay Paid come into fruition?
Sure. So Stay Paid actually originated about 3 years ago. It might be over that now. So it was before I actually started working with Reminder Media. I started back it'll be 3 years this April, which is kind of wild. It feels like I've only been there for nowhere near 3 years, but it's been an absolute blast working for Reminder Media. I love that company. I could go on and on about that for who knows how long. But Mark, who was one of my coworkers at the time, he was one that really, really saw the potential for podcasting and was one of the people, many people that kind of spearheaded that idea and kind of brought it to fruition. And, you know, we have incredible people that work for Reminder Media. Luke, who is the president of Reminder Media, Josh, who is the CMO of Reminder Media, just two incredibly knowledgeable people in the field of what they do with sales and marketing. So it was kind of a no-brainer. You have these two really intelligent guys who have great personalities. Why not make a podcast and be able to share that value, which I'm sure is going to be something that we talk about more on this, share that value with anyone and everyone that's willing to listen. So that was kind of where everything had started, really just with the idea of presenting value. But also, you know, one of the things that they kind of thought of with the podcast was, with sharing value, there's definitely the potential to acquire new clients. So that was one of the other things as well. We work a lot with real estate agents, financial advisors, small business owners, and just saying, you know, the things that we're discussing on the podcast, a lot of that information has come through years of practice with the things that we sell at Reminder Media. So definitely kind of a win-win scenario in the sense of providing value to anyone that would listen, but also with the potential of potentially bringing on new clients for Reminder Media. So that's the 30,000 foot view of essentially where Stay Paid originated before I kind of joined the team 3 years ago or so.
Okay. So I have a few questions for you, but I also want to let everyone who's watching live right now know that if you're on YouTube, you can comment questions, and I'll be scanning the comment section, and I will as well ask those to Arielle. I'm assuming all the questions are going to be for her. I mean, if they're for me, but I'm pretty sure that they're for you, Arielle. Um,
I'll send one in right now. I'll go on YouTube right now. Send one in.
oh, thank you. So what do you think the biggest factor is? I know there's multiple factors here, but what do you think the biggest factor is to Stay Paid's success in the macro?
For sure. So that's a great question. I think when you're creating any piece of content, you want to make sure that you're producing something that people will actually listen to, and not only listen to once, but come back regularly. So the one thing that we had really want and continue to focus on is, how are we not only bringing value to our listeners and to our audience, but how are we providing tangible tips and actionable items to those listeners so that they can immediately go and improve, you know, their business and improve their day-to-day activities. One of the things that we do on every single episode, at the very end, Luke provides an action item from some of the topics that we discuss within the episode. So for example, it could be something, if we're discussing with a guest on referrals, saying at the very end, if there's something that he really liked that the guest said, he could say something at the end like, and your action item for today is call up your past 10 clients and ask for a referral, see how they're doing, check in, follow up. And it's something that immediately after that podcast is ended, you can immediately go and take action on it. One of the if not the biggest thing that we encourage our listeners for Stay Paid is the difference, but it's the tagline, the end of every single episode, is that the difference between top producers and mediocre producers is that top producers take action and take action on that today. So that's one of the things we try to provide as much value as possible so that our listeners feel empowered and encouraged to actually go on and take action from the things that they heard in our episode. So I would definitely say that that is a big separator from a lot of other podcasts. And not in a bad way. You know, everyone has their own ideas and things like that when they're producing their podcast. But I will say that one of the things that I think sets us apart is all of the value and the actual tangible tips that we're able to provide to our audience.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, and I know I'm guilty of this, you can always have so many ideas. You can always talk about those ideas on a podcast, on a video, on a live stream. We can always talk. But do you actually walk? You know, talk the talk, walk the walk. Taking the action. Right. So has Stay Paid always kind of had this format, or has it evolved from the beginning of it to now? How planned, how strategic is the producing and the planning of each episode?
For sure. So, excuse me, I will say that At the very beginning, it really started with Josh and Luke essentially talking about things that they knew they could provide value for and things that they knew the audience would definitely be interested in learning more about. As we wanted to actually grow the podcast, I'm not sure who had the idea or if it was a joint effort within the team, decided that we wanted to try and get guests on so we could not only share our value that we could provide, but also have guests with an outside perspective also provide value to the audience. And that essentially snowballed into what the show is today. We produce 2 episodes a week. Our Monday episode has a guest. So that is with a Zoom call, very similar to this, with Josh and Luke interviewing a guest that is successful in whatever field they come from. And that way we're able to provide value, like I said, outside of just Josh and Luke's perspective. And then every Thursday, we're also producing an episode. It's a shorter episode. We call those our silver dollar episodes. They're about 20 minutes long, 15, 20 minutes. That's what we like to say, 15, 20 minutes. But, depending on the topic, they get a little bit longer. But those episodes are really to highlight Josh and Luke and just really the knowledge that they have and the experience they have, because they've been in this for, 10 years, 15 years. So they have so much that they offer in terms of value. And it's really great to kind of get both perspectives of Josh and Luke and the experiences they've had with Reminder Media, but also on those Monday episodes, getting the perspective and the experience from some incredibly talented and successful people within their fields as well. So that's essentially the biggest shift that we've seen since the podcast has started. But like I said, the biggest, effort that we always put in is always making sure that the episodes provide value and that are providing tangible tips. Because if we're going to put in the energy and the time to create something, we want to make sure that it's actually helping produce results for the people that are listening, because we're so thankful for the people that take the time to listen, that we want to make sure that if they're taking the 45 minutes, the 30 minutes, the 20 minutes to listen to our episodes, that they're actually going to get something from it. Because at the end of the day, that's our biggest, hope for people, is that they're able to take something from our episodes to improve their day-to-day or their business overall.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. So we both know that consistency is a huge factor and a huge key into growing and expanding your reach and really expanding, going wide and deep at the same time. But in an ideal world, you can maintain quality and consistency. How do you manage how do you manage the quality to quantity ratio, or do you even manage it? Are you able to, with all of your brain power, being able to kick out an absolute great episode of quality and still produce 2 a week?
So that's a great question. I think that there are definitely, in the sense of quality, I think it's twofold. And I think this is bigger for like the audience listeners that are listening right now or might listen to this at a later date. I think quality is kind of twofold. It's the quality of your production, which as a video producer, as a content creator, that's always something that's been near and dear to my heart. I think that if you're going to do something, you should do it well. But I also think that for anyone that's listening, thinking about starting a podcast, thinking about creating video, you don't necessarily need all of this fancy equipment, fancy gear. You don't need to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars on something to get your message across. You can take your phone and do anything that you would like with your phone that I can do or you can do with, all of this fancy equipment. So before I even get into the actual content of the episode or the podcast, I want to just preface with that in saying that while quality does seem a little bit daunting in terms of production, it's not an impossible task. And it's something that you can increase over time the more that you do it consistently. And I think that what you touched on there is huge, because I think at the end of the day, and it's something that you and I discussed right before we actually went live here, it's you're showing up and you are consistently, putting yourself out there and creating this content and doing things that might put you out of your comfort zone. Because I'm sure that, it's 2021 and, especially after this last year of everyone being essentially virtual, if they can be, talking online through Zoom and, kind of shifting our lifestyle a lot in this last year. I think that we've all kind of been pushed outside of our comfort zones. And so being able to show up and consistently show up is huge. So I totally agree with you on that. In the sense of the content and the quality of the content for podcasts, I would be lying if I said, Christian, after every single episode, we walk away and we're like, that was incredible. That was an absolute killer interview. But I think that, with everything in life, and this is just, me being very philosophical here, so bear with me. I think that with everything, you're always going to have those killer moments. You're like, this is incredible. Life is going great. This is awesome. And the same with podcasts. We have so many episodes with so many incredible guests where we walk away and we're like, we know the audience is going to love this. And we're so amped and excited for that podcast to release. And there are also episodes, I won't mention any names, obviously, but I think that even the silver dollar episodes and the episodes that we have with certain guests, I think that sometimes we're like, oh, like we don't really know how that's going to translate or things of that nature, but you're always learning, with everything in life. If something isn't necessarily going the best way or, translating in the way that you would want it to, you always kind of have to take a step back and say, okay, this isn't exactly what we pictured. What can we change to make this better in the long run? What can we adjust so that next time, if it's going a certain direction, we can shift questions or we can shift the conversation to get more back on track. So I think, and it's so funny because, after we record every episode, we're having a short dialogue, just kind of recapping, how did this go? What can we improve next time? And it's so funny because some of the episodes that we listen to in the moment while we're having the interview, afterwards we're like, we don't really know how that went. And sometimes those are some of our best episodes. So I think that it's very interesting as a creator. I think 9 times out of 10, we can get so down on ourselves and say, oh, that wasn't a great video, or, oh, that wasn't the best quality. And sometimes those videos end up doing dramatically better than some of the videos or the content that you produce. And you're like, this is killer. This is incredible. So it's definitely an interesting kind of, concept there alone. So I don't necessarily think that at this point, we're always learning is essentially what I'm trying to get across here is, even on the episodes that you think you're doing great and are incredible, there's always something to learn from that for next time. And the same idea goes with the episodes that we might not necessarily have think will do the best.
That's it. And I will say the feeling that you have when you're producing like those episodes where you walk away and you're like, yes, this is the greatest episode ever. That's this episode right here, FYI. So I'm walking away after this call, after this interview. Best interview ever.
Yeah.
And I mean, from what I see on YouTube here, seems like we do have a nice turnout. And we actually have a comment from Jake Zimmers. Great to see some Kutztown pals talking about the crazy world of podcasting. Thank you both for the informative conversations. You are welcome, Jake.
Wow. Thanks for tuning in, Jake. That's so exciting. I was actually on Jake's podcast. Jake, just to spotlight him, he has an incredible podcast. And if you are a music lover or just love listening to conversation, I think a lot of people that listen to podcasts just love hearing the dialogue back and forth. Definitely check out Jake Zimmers on Spotify. Bang Your Head podcast, I believe is the name. And I actually got to do an interview with him about my favorite album, which is by Alan Stone. So if you want to, selfless plug, if you want to check out that episode, feel free to go and check that out. But he is doing incredible with his podcast as well. So thank you for tuning in, Jake. You're incredible. So definitely go check his stuff out if you have a chance. If you want to, especially now that we're talking about podcasts, check out one of our friends.
And that's funny. I didn't know you were interviewed for his podcast. He's interviewing me tonight.
Love that.
That's awesome.
That's so fun. That's incredible.
So I want to shift gears a little bit to consistency of trying to think how to word this. Consistency of medium, but different platforms. So podcasting is your jam with Stay Paid. But you, Arielle Thomas, are a video producer and have produced on how many different social media platforms?
Right.
If someone is starting out and they say, I need to make content for my business, where do they go? Wherever they choose to go, and they, podcast is my thing. Okay, I'm going to do a podcast. Do they have to are they locked into podcasts, or can they experiment with Instagram or YouTube? How does that work with maintaining the consistency? Because I don't think it's a great idea, and maybe you can shed some light on this. I don't think it's a great idea to produce 5 podcast episodes and then go, no, forget the podcast. I'm going to YouTube. And then you make 3 YouTube episodes. Okay, no, IGTV is where it's at.
Right, right. No, I that's a great question. I think one of the key things that you just mentioned in that question, key word there being experimenting. Before you commit to any sort, even if you say to yourself, I personally love creating videos. I love putting content out there that I love to create. I think you definitely have to have a passion for whatever you're going to be creating, because if you don't have that passion, it will definitely burn you out, because if you're not passionate about something and you are forcing yourself to be consistent with, a certain platform or medium, you're going to end up hating it. And no one wants to, especially if you're doing this primarily for your audience, you want to make sure that what you're producing provides them value, but also is something that you're passionate about so you can continue to stick with it. But experimenting is huge, because before you lock yourself down, and I really don't even think that with all of the platforms that are out there right now, you're really locking yourself down. I think you really need to experiment and say, hey, what do I like to create? Because like I said, you have to be passionate about it. You have to love what you're doing. Otherwise, you won't do it, and it just will fall flat in 3 months. But I think that before you really commit to trying and kind of putting a lot of effort into a platform, you really need to know what your audience, A, who is your audience, and B, where are they at? Because there are certain demographics and there are certain age groups and things of that nature that are on different platforms and that are looking for different types of content. So it really depends on what your audience is looking for and where they're going to be at, especially if you're a small business owner. You should already kind of have an idea of who your target audience is. If you're running ads on Facebook, or if you're doing anything like that, you should have a general idea of who you're targeting and who you want your audience to be. And then from there, altering your content and figuring out what platform works best for you. One of the things that you and I had talked about, I guess the last time we spoke and when we were kind of prepping for this, was the idea that, you could say all you want, Arielle, figure out your target audience and do whatever they want. But like I said at the beginning of this, you want to make sure that you're passionate about it. So even if you say, listen, Arielle, I know that my audience members and my listeners and whoever you're, targeting for the content that you're creating, I know that they love podcasts, but I love creating video, or whatever it may be. You got to be passionate about it. So I think that it's definitely there are so many platforms out there right now. And especially if we've learned anything with the podcast, it is very much, you have so many different ways to repurpose content in 2021. So if you create a podcast, if that's what you're passionate about, but you know that your audience is primarily on YouTube or on Instagram, you can be clipping up certain parts of this podcast and putting it on social media. You can create a video of yourself doing a podcast and post that as the medium on YouTube. So it's not necessarily you have to pick one and that's the only option that you have. There are so many ways that you can repurpose content, even if it's just with graphics. Creating Canva is an incredible website for you to do this with, and it's totally free. As with everything, there's a pro version. But if you're just getting started and you're just kind of testing out the waters, Canva is an incredible website for you to just kind of say, okay, this is a great quote that I had from this interview with X, Y, and Z. I'm going to take that and post it on my Instagram in hopes that might gain traction for them for people to go and check out the full episode. So I know that was kind of all over the place in the sense of options, but there are so many options for you to investigate and to experiment with. My biggest piece of advice would be to figure out where your audience is at and figure out what you're passionate about. And if those don't necessarily line up, figure out what you want to do and how you can repurpose the content on multiple different platforms so you're not just shoehorning yourself into one avenue.
So it sounds like you create your pillar, your pillar platform, we'll call it. So in your case, the podcasting for Stay Paid, that is the pillar, but you also record video of the podcast itself, and that gets repurposed to Instagram, to YouTube. The main pillar is podcasting, but you get to sprinkle that in on different platforms if you want to try it out.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to make a note, I suppose, because I know early in my career I had this notion in my head when Arielle is saying about demographics and different target audiences on different platforms.
Mhm.
It's not like only people ages 0 to 18 are on TikTok. Only people
Right.
45 to 65 are on Facebook. It's not like, okay, I just turned 45. Now, ditch Instagram and go to Facebook.
Right.
It's not, black and white like that. Everyone, and this is a generalized statement, but everyone is on every platform. Interpret that as you will. Like, I'm not on TikTok. Like, I
Right.
don't, it's not even on my phone. And just like my dad still does not have a Facebook. Everyone is on every platform, but there is a general sense of people pick their favorite. Like, YouTube is my
Yes.
favorite by far. Instagram is,
Hmm.
it's kind of creeping up there second place, and then everything else is like, man, whatever. Like, don't
Right.
you dare reach out to me on Snapchat. I'll respond to you, but like, you are not getting my professional attention on Snapchat. But also what
Right.
we were talking about before, in a previous call, the frame of mind and the intention of a platform. And I think this is really important for all business people. And I was even thinking about this because we're all guilty of it, I feel. I mean, promoting this call, this live stream, I promoted it on Instagram. Instagram was not built for businesses.
Right.
Instagram was built for people to take selfies of themselves and post it. And while people take plenty of selfies, businesses also post very businessy content to Instagram.
Mhm.
The data has shown, and you were telling me this earlier, that when you take a picture of you and your sister together, post it to Instagram versus you taking a behind the scenes shot of, filming the podcast, the picture
Hmm.
of you and your sister does consistently better than a work businessy photo.
Right.
Flip it with LinkedIn, and the work businessy photo does much better on LinkedIn. So there's always a contextual aspect
For-
to each platform, and it's just kind of getting
Absolutely.
into that and understanding the mechanics behind it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that one of the things before really creating content and figuring out your audience, I think that you have to understand the platforms that you're posting to, because at the end of the day, a lot of social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, a lot of them were created in its purest form to be social, hence the name social media. And I think a lot of times, and I've been a culprit of this as well, I think that we want to share what we enjoy and what we want to put out into the world. At the end of the day, I don't necessarily care if I get one person or any people that like anything I post on my Instagram. It's what I want to share and put out into the universe. I think a lot of people will say, this isn't successful because I'm not getting 115 likes. I get 115 likes of me and my sister, and I get 3 likes of a video I posted for something that I was creating for work. But I think at the end of the day, I'm just as passionate about the things I'm posting about my social life as I am my work related material. And I think especially when you are growing and you are building your brand, your vibe attracts your tribe. So if you're posting things that are passionate about you, your current audience might not resonate with some of the content, but that's not to say that other people won't find your page and will resonate more so with that than maybe posts that you post of your social life. Like, I think that a lot of people get so in their head about, overthinking, well, what is this person thinking when they see this post? Or why am I getting, less likes on this than this? I think that there's definitely a strategy that you need to go into with certain things, but you don't necessarily want to say, okay, if my sister and I get great engagement on Instagram, that doesn't mean that I'm going to turn around and change every single post to a picture of my sister and I, because at the end of the day, people started following me not necessarily for pictures of my sister and I, but for my life and how I'm posting on social media. So I think while it's important to see what posts are getting more engagement than others. And you always want to be checking, regardless of what platform you're on or what, you're posting to begin with. You want to be in tune with your analytics. The one tip I will give is, if you are a small business owner or if you are working in business, you want to make sure that all of your accounts across the board, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, everything, has the ability to get those insights and those analytics. And that's a free, option, I believe, on most platforms, if not all. I know on Instagram, there's a business profile option. On Facebook, there is as well. You just want to be able to make sure that you're not just saying, oh, well, I can see I have 15 likes on this, so that must be doing, poorly in comparison to X, Y, and Z. There are so many other factors that go into what creates a good post, and that's different for everyone. I think a lot of people, especially when you think of a platform like Instagram or Facebook, things where you can see that engagement, other people can see that engagement up front. A lot of people rely on likes to see whether or not something is successful. But I think of, a small business owner who might get 10 likes on an Instagram post about a new, like, let's take, for example, if someone is creating jewelry, gold jewelry, clay jewelry, whatever it may be in their house. A lot of people have, taken to crafts and, crickets and everything like that over the course of this pandemic, and created a small business within their page. If you get 10 people that like that picture versus your 75 or whatever it is on a selfie of yourself, similar to what you said earlier, but 3 of those 10 people are messaging you on Instagram, I love this, where can I get it? What's more successful, 75 people that are just liking a picture and never interacting with any of your business, or the 3 of 10 that are messaging you interested in your product? So I think that, like we had kind of talked about, you want to make sure that you're aware of the type of content that is popular on certain platforms, but you also don't want to just shoehorn yourself into saying, just because this gets the most engagement, that's the only thing I'm going to post. Because at the end of the day, you might be missing out on some valuable leads, on some valuable conversation with people that are interested in part of that smaller audience, potentially, that are looking at the other things that you're posting and are just as interested in that as the popular things on your page.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As you're talking, I'm thinking, we've kind of transitioned from podcasting to just engagement. I
Yeah.
wonder why that is. Kind of just circling back to, in my introduction, the medium is the medium. The goal
Mhm.
is to deepen your connection with your core audience.
Right.
Whatever it takes, whatever medium, whatever strategy, platform, that's it. And
Yeah.
I think that has to, that is the art of any content creation, not just the art of podcasting. I know the title of this live stream is about the art of podcasting, but it really is the art of communicating even.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I do want to keep the focus on podcasting, though. That's the title, and I do want
Right. Right.
to play to your strengths as the producer of Stay Paid. I want to ask the questions that, like, I'm sure a lot of people have. I pride myself in asking and giving the answers to burning questions.
Yes. Love that.
It's great.
Put me on the hot seat, Christian. Let's go.
Hot seat,
I'll answer
Arielle. All
anything you
right, let's
got.
go. Okay, so I'm a new business owner. I don't have any content under my belt. I'm thinking about what I want to do. I've listened to this fantastic interview.
Oh, love that for them.
You know what, Arielle? I'm gonna do podcasting. I already ordered my
Okay.
microphone on Amazon. I have everything set up. I
Right.
have a guest lined up.
Love it.
What do I say? What how, what do I say? And what do Luke and Josh say? What do they do? And I know you did touch on this a little bit, but what do they what comes on as soon as the mics are hot and
hmm
they're live?
So I think, and you're going to see a recurring trend with a lot of my answers for a lot of these questions, is that everything should go back to your target audience. At the end of the day, unless it's a very personal, podcast or something along those lines that you're just doing for you and your friends and family. If that's the case, you can talk about whatever the heck you want to talk about. You're doing what makes you happy and what you want to produce, and you're passionate about that. By all means, talk about what you had for breakfast that day. Whatever you're feeling, go for it. If you're thinking more on the business track, the one thing that I will suggest is some of the things that we recommend is if you are starting out creating content for the first time, but you've been in the field for a decent amount of time to really understand your audience, 9 times out of 10, you will have a list of frequently asked questions. People coming to you saying, this is the one question I get over and over and over and over again related to your business. Start with that, because one of the best parts about that, and we talk about repurposing content, we talked about that a little bit earlier, is that if you have a website, you can say, this is a clip that I pulled from my podcast that I'm releasing every week, every other week. Feel free to send them back to that so they can listen to the full episode, but pulling out a segment of, this is the one question I get all the time, putting that on your website under your frequently asked questions page, because I know so many people have those, and I think those are incredible, especially to get to know you as a business owner, but also to be able to relate to you in the form of content, in the form of, it's not just text on a page, you're hearing audio, you're seeing a person potentially if it's video, and it's not just specifically an audio podcast. So the one thing that I will recommend is if you're starting off, start with the frequently asked questions. Figure out, people are clearly interested in those answers if they're frequently asking you that, hence the name. So I would definitely start with that. And then from there, I think that you're going to get, audience members that are, we consistently ask all the time, what do you guys want to hear about on Stay Paid? What are the things that you're struggling with the most in your business? And we'll have people message us and say, hey, I loved your episode on cold calling. I want to dive a little bit deeper on X, Y, and Z. And we take that and run with it, because we're consistently looking for it. Always circles back to, what is our audience looking for the most? Because at the end of the day, it's a win-win. We're getting the downloads, and we're, raising ourselves up in the charts on iTunes because we're getting those people interested in the content. But we're also answering the burning questions, something that you alluded to what they need the most in their business. And it really is just a very beautiful kind of relationship that happens with that, because they see you answering the questions that you have, and they become a raving fan. And I think that is just a really great piece of content creation that people don't think about a ton, especially when it comes to the frequently asked questions. I feel like a lot of times they're very underrated, and people don't necessarily think how much they can pull from that to get new clients, to further those relationships with the clients that they already have. And really, there are so many, especially on the internet right now. If you take the internet in its simplest form, outside of social media, outside of just, you killing time, 9 times out of 10, if you're Googling something or you're looking something, like, the internet is such an information-based place. Why not contribute to that? And why not, really focus in on your audience and what they're looking for? Because 9 times out of 10, if someone I know knows something about a subject, like, to be fully transparent, if I had a question about any sort of audio or video or something like that related to shooting video content, I'm coming to Christian, or I'm going to one of my friends that are consistently doing this over and over again. It's so much easier, and you respect that value so much more coming from a person than a site that you viewed on Google for the first time that really didn't answer your question, but you got some information from it. So if you become that subject matter expert, you are going to get those people coming to you. And that's just another great way for you to be able to further that relationship, because the more times they're coming to you, the more times you're able to have conversations with them about things outside of business, outside of the questions that they're having. And the better that relationship is, 9 times out of 10, the more business you're going to get from that person. There's a great statistic or, stat out there that says 80% of your business comes from 20% of your sphere. And it's an incredible stat to say, those 20% of people that are your raving fans are telling anyone and everyone about the incredible service that you provide. So instead of saying, I want to generalize my content and really just put everything out there in hopes that, my tribe or the people that I want will come to me, it's a great idea for you to focus in on those people that are consistently asking you questions, coming to you and building those relationships, because 9 times out of 10, it's a lot better to work with a referral from someone than a cold lead that you got off the internet. So
Exactly. Well,
that's kind of
that's
my answer.
you. And so as you were saying that, I was like, this sounds very, very similar to a stream that I did, I believe, a month ago, and it's called "The Story Behind the $10,000 Piece of Content," which
Mm-hmm.
was I did a live stream on my channel that broke down the first piece of content I made, and it answered the number one most frequently asked question I always got. At this time, I was at that point I was doing wedding videos, so I was talking to couples and brides to be, and every single bride had the question, "Do I need raw footage?" And the answer is almost always no.
Right.
But they read a blog somewhere that they did need
Yeah.
it, and they're just like, what do you mean? What do you mean it's not like what I can't have?" And I'm like, okay, let me explain this. Made a video about it, and then that video answered 3 brides burning questions in 1 week, and then they all booked
Mm-hmm.
me, resulting in over $10,000, which was a very
Sure.
nice week for me. Um,
Right. Right. I think the big thing with that too, that I just want to touch on really quick, sorry to interrupt, is that you want to be a trusted source. I think a lot of times, especially in the example that you just gave, you are providing value and putting that out into the universe for whoever wants to see it. And I think that just based on that alone makes you a trusted expert in the community, as opposed to this person who's posting a blog saying you need to have raw footage or you're missing out kind of deal. I could almost guarantee that that person is in wedding films and things of that nature, but wants to, make an extra buck off of anyone that will read that blog. And by all means, I respect the hustle, more power to you. But I think that one of the biggest things when it comes to building relationships and building, your sphere and that audience is that element of trust. And as soon as you get that element of trust, it's, you can't put a value on that. You can't put a price on that. So I think that just what you touched on there, I wanted to reiterate that for anyone listening, because that is a huge, huge piece right there.
right, right. Yeah, I was not out to just make extra commission. I
Right.
laid it out, and I was very, very honest in the video, in the original piece of video content, which was like 5 minutes long. It wasn't even a podcast or anything like that. It
Right.
was very neutral of, if you're in this camp, okay, maybe you want the raw footage. If you're in this camp, you probably don't need it. Like, just
Right.
straight up.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, that was the first FAQ, the first burning question I answered, and it was very well received. I continued to do it, and everything kind of skyrocketed from there. Same goes with stay paid. Same goes with anyone's business. Anyone who has their ear to their customer will hear a trend. They will hear the repeat questions, and if you listen long enough, and that's also the key, is listening long enough, engaging with your audience long enough to really understand where their pain points are, to really
Mm-hmm.
understand what are they struggling with.
Yeah.
And then that's where you strike while the iron's hot. You make a video, you do a podcast, you write up a blog, whatever the medium is, connecting with your core audience is the goal.
Absolutely.
So let me check YouTube here. We have some great view times. This is amazing. Thank you everyone who's
Mhm.
watching.
Yeah, seriously.
So I don't see any questions on YouTube, probably because you're crushing it, Arielle, and you're answering you're answering like with the most, you are providing the most value as possible. Straight
Try
fire.
and try.
Is there any lasting note that you want to give to people specific to podcast? I think we've nailed it into people's heads that medium is irrelevant and the goal
Hmm.
is what really matters. But with podcasting, with producing it and getting it out into the world, whether you're starting out, whether you're kind of in a jam already and want to continue it, is there any parting advice you want to give?
I think we kind of touched on this earlier, but just consistency is everything. I think if we've seen anything, when we started Stay Paid, the first episode we got had 35 downloads, and we are well above that now. So I think, and that's over the course of 3 years. I think very often it's daunting to try something that you've never done before, and not only try it, but do it consistently over time. And with anything, the more practice you get, the better you get over time. But I think that even though it's daunting, it can provide so much value for you. And the one thing I will say, which this comes from someone that we had on the podcast, Eric Fang, talked about this, there in this past year, like I kind of touched on, with everyone primarily being virtual for, jobs and things like that, there are people that have never ventured and taken the leap to go digital and to be more on social media and things like that. And there are people that have been in the field for 25 years. He used the example of, a real estate agent who has been in the year, like number one agent for the past several years. And then within this last year, a new agent who had been in the year or had been in the field for, I don't know, 1 or 2 years, maybe. I might be butchering the story on that part, but very small amount of time in comparison to this agent, was willing to try new things and was on social media. They ended up surpassing this agent who had been, staying the same route for 25 years. So I say all of that to say, it doesn't necessarily matter, like we said about the mediums or anything like that, or really just, this is a concept for life in general and business in general, not even just with podcasting, but consistency over time will produce results. And that is the one thing that I keep coming back to. You want to provide value. You want to make sure you have your target audience. All of that stuff is very important. But the most important factor with anything content related, whether it's podcasting, business, any of that stuff, is that you're being consistent over time. So that is the one thing that I would recommend.
Absolutely. And I will happily echo that until the end of time. Consistently.
Love it. Consistently echoing it. Love it.
So for all that are watching, if you want to learn about podcasting, if you want to really learn from the masters, you can actually go and check out the Stay Paid podcast. The link is in the description. And if you're saying podcasting is really cool, but I want to venture into video and I'm kind of, it's a little intimidating, I don't really know what to do, I actually have a great starter guide filled with very easy to use plug and play equipment. You actually use your phone as the camera. Great lighting, great audio, and it's called the Entrepreneur's Video Survival Pack. That as well is in the description. You can get it at christiangolic.com to get started with that. And if you want to reach out to Arielle and tell her what a great job she did, on Instagram, at Arielle Thomas, as you can see. And if you have any questions for me, at Christian Golic on Instagram, Twitter, I think every single social media. Is that the same for you, Arielle? Are you Arielle Thomas at every single social?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I am primarily on Instagram. That is probably my favorite app to be on. So if I have any, DM, that's probably the best place to find me, is on Instagram at Arielle Thomas. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm Arielle Thomas across the board. Arielle is a pretty uncommon name, so it was pretty easy to grab that when social media was first coming out. So
I understand. There's not too many Christians with a K out there, especially with my last name.
You got it.
So, and that, hey, Arielle, consistency. Consistent tag across every platform.
Yeah. Makes it easy to find.
All right. I hope everyone enjoyed this fantastic conversation. I know I did, and learned a ton. Thank you so much, Arielle. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I had a blast.
Yeah. So stay tuned in 2 weeks. Everyone who is a consistent watcher of this show, in 2 Wednesdays, I'll be back. Don't know what I'm talking about yet. Don't know who I'm interviewing yet, but I'll be back because I'm consistent. All right. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you soon.